Welcome everybody. Forrest Nace here with American Steam Railroad, bringing to you our July 2023 update. But first, I do want to speak a little bit about our press release that we had with regard to the Reading 2100 burning recycled oil. I wanted to let everybody know that this decision actually had its roots starting back a few years. And while a decision was not made until very recently, when our good friends at the Western Maryland Scenic Railroad were notified that they had to put in coal storage, and ash removal program. This got our attention. And several years back, while we were doing some work on the coal parts, most notably the auger that's in the trough there for the stoker mechanism, we kind of put a halt on that, as we had only at that time had about 20 hours and a few $100s of work and cost into it at that moment. So here within about then the last 18 months, starting in January of last year, as we were having conversations with several of the sites we were going to be potentially operating at, the question was coming up more and more often, what fuel are you going to be using? And at that time we were considering possibly oil, but we're still evaluating all of the costs as well as what it would take to move the coal around and remove the ash properly. Well, everybody, here at the beginning of the year we started to really analyze those numbers, and looking at what the costs were going to be for all of that, it started to become evident that oil burning, especially for us being a traveling locomotive most of the time, was going to be what we needed to do to remain a financially viable operation that would be sustainable many, many years down the road. And with our final analysis done over the last 90 days and some of those sites we were looking to run at coming back and saying, for the most part, we're really wanting you to be an oil-burning locomotive, that pretty much solidified the deal for us, that our best option at this time was for the 2100 to be a recycled oil-burning locomotive. So we first off want to appreciate all the support we have got for this decision, with many of you giving us great correspondence on that. And for those of you that still have some concerns, we definitely appreciate your respectful nature and correspondence you've done, and I do want to address some of those points that have been brought up. But first and foremost, I did want to let everybody know that we will not be assisting FMW. FMW will be doing this project. They will engineer it, they will be the ones implementing it and doing the work. And with regard to that, some people had a question about the butterfly doors. Now, we've seen this done in other locomotives like the 489 and the Everett number 11, and that's why we mentioned it. However, here at American Steam, as always, safety is first, then followed by reliable operation and optimum performance. So if FMW says there is absolutely no way that butterfly doors can be utilized, even if just on display, without affecting negatively any of those items, then it will not be done. Again, it will be their project. They are taking the lead. They will do it from beginning to end. The other item that was mentioned was with regard to the costs we already have in the coal items, such as the work we had done on the stoker's auger, as well as the transportation to get the parts to here from the museum that we're at. Well, everybody, the costs were very minimal. We just have a few $100s in welding rod and about 20 hours of time in so far. Also, those people are all on board with this, and as we had stated, the coal parts that we have will be properly stored. Nothing is being scrapped. So at some point, if the locomotive were to be put to coal, all the parts would be here and the restoration work on them could be completed. Now, as far as the design and shape and size of the Wooten firebox on the T1, again, this is FMW's project, so they have complete confidence that this will be a great firing and running locomotive, as do we. They are doing all of the engineering services to ensure that is the case. And then the other item then that I did want to address is somebody had mentioned, well, Strasburg still runs coal, as does our good friends as well, the Reading and Northern, and Western Maryland Scenic and other locations, and this is true. However, those locations already had the infrastructure in place to store the coal as well as store the ash and then remove the ash properly. So for them it did make sense, and if 2100 was just going to be visiting sites like that, then the coal might have still been a possibility. However, please understand, we still have to go from point A to point B to get to these locations, and those railroads along the way that we may be stopping at or spending the night at probably will not have any of those facilities. So it makes the most sense for us, not only economically, as well as making it simple for us to refuel at those locations. So again, everybody, we thank you so much for the overwhelming support that we have received for this, as well as those respectful comments of concern that people have, and we hope we can address all of those for you, and that you will still continue to support us, because we all would like to see 2 T1s running at some point, and to be honest, the only way that will happen is for us to get 2100 finished and back under steam. Well, everybody, one of the big projects we were able to complete here in July was the reassembly of the number 4 driver's suspension. This had to be disassembled so that way our volunteers and professional contractors could get up into this area and work on those sleeves that were not going to pass inspection. With the new half sleeves, gaskets, and caps now all in place, we were able to put the suspension back together. So let's go take a look at how that was done. The first step in this process was to lift the rear of the locomotive up 6 inches. This was done with 2 50-ton hydraulic jacks placed underneath the rear lift points. With the locomotive's rear now lifted, the springs were set into place. These springs weigh approximately 500 pounds each. With the springs set in position, the pivot seats were placed on the springs, and then the shackles were swung into place. The final step was to assemble all of the linkage and pins that connect the springs to the equalizing linkage under the locomotive. The springs of the number 4 driver are equalized to the trailing truck. Our younger volunteers continued their work on the inside of the boiler this month, completing the removal of all of the old tube ends from the tube sheets. In addition to this work, our volunteers have cleaned the inside of all the tube holes to prepare them for the tube installation process, and have marked the minor nicks created during the tube removal process. This is a normal occurrence during the tube removal. And in August, our professional contractor will fill these little nicks in with weld and then grind them smooth, making the surface as good as new for the tubes that will then be inserted. And speaking of those new boiler tubes, please consider being a sponsor to have 1 or more of those delivered tubes installed into the 2100's boiler. For just $37, your generous donation will pay to roll, bead, and weld 1 tube into place. Please visit our gift store and then select Boiler Tube Installation to make your contribution today. On the outside of the boiler, volunteers removed the left side running board and brackets to take ultrasound thickness readings underneath. With those readings completed, the boiler was then primed and painted, and the running board and air tank radiator piping were mounted back into place. We will do the same to the right side running board and brackets throughout August to complete the last of our ultrasound readings per the FRA's request. The recently acquired booster engine has received some attention as well. Our crew has needle scaled the outer housing as well as the large steam swivel piping. The cover plates on the booster housing were removed as well, and we were pleased that the inside components looked to be in relatively good shape. In the future, we will disassemble the cylinders to access the condition of the pistons, rings, and other components. We are pleased to announce our next Legends of Steam event with Steve Wickersham as our keynote speaker. And it is coming to you on October 28th right here in Cleveland, Ohio, and there will be limited seating as before. So definitely get your tickets today, and we hope to see you there. Well, everybody, that's what we've been able to accomplish here in July. And I did want to remind everybody that we do have our new beautiful Rambles t-shirt showing all 3 of the Reading T1s that ran from 1959 to 1964, the 2100, the 2102, and the 2124. In stock and now shipping, so please order yours up today. We, of course, would like to thank our generous donors, our wonderful volunteers here, the restoration crew, the members that support us financially and in other administrative ways, as well as our vendors and our good friends here at the Midwest Railway Preservation Society. And we look forward to bringing you the August update where even more good news will be happening. Thank you.